Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala barakatuh. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Alhamdulillah, we have explained the fixed ratio conditioning, and today I'm going to give you some idea about how the effect of variable ratio conditioning and gambling, because as I mentioned earlier on in the laws of learning, whether through classical or operant conditioning, we are all conditioned. Every aspect of our life are conditioned by the forces that we are living as we live in this world. That means the environmental forces in terms of our physical environmental requirement, and also in the social and community and social, and then intra-social, and then our inner speech. So what is important is how we're going to harness our internal strength actually to overcome certain type of conditioning, especially that can be very addictive. And this kind of conditioning happens, especially, for example, people who are gambling, and it is actually the effect of conditioning through the effects of variable ratio conditioning. So I'll just read here. Variable ratio schedule are very common and very old in human society. So this is very old. We have gambling. There are many forms of gambling. It's one of the most prominent example. Gambling behavior is developed and maintained by conditioning on a variable ratio schedule. So, for example, if we take the game of dice, you throw your dice, whether a single dice or a pair of dice. All right, there are variable conditioning taking place all the time to make you want to bet. So for example, on the average in the game of dice, 1 in 6 throw will win. That means because there are 6 faces of the cube, that means 1 in 6 will win. The throw or the bet on each throw is a response. The winnings are the reinforcing stimulus. It is the intermittent pairing of the response and the reinforcing stimulus which conditions gambling behavior. Sometimes the variable ratio schedule, on the variable ratio schedule, the reinforcing stimulus will follow with several responses in succession, and sometimes there will be a large number of responses in a row which go unrewarded. When a person gambles for the first time, and they may encounter a number of reinforcing responses in quick succession, in which there is quite a few times they never win. The person who wins in quick succession because of the throw would more likely to gamble again in the future. Once a gambling behavior becomes established on the variable ratio schedule, it will become very resistant to extinction. So it is very difficult to resist this idea that, there is always hope I can win even up to the last try. Sometimes gambling can be very, very severe problem in people's life. Now there are millions and millions of people who are addicted to gambling. They rather go hungry and buy a lottery ticket, for example. Even the odds are 1 in maybe 50 million, all right? But they still go 1 in 50 million, they'll still throw their hard-earned money to go betting. And you can find in a lot of the betting shops, you can find people betting, they are not actually having a good life. They are all the time losing, but they're hoping for one big win all the time because of this intermittent reward, small rewards that they get that keep on them baited towards becoming a lifelong gambler, which is an addiction. Sometimes gambling could become very severe problem in people's life. It is a resistance to extinction of variable ratio schedule which can cause those terrible problems in gambling. There's never a response that doesn't have a chance of being reinforced of a win. That means you always have a win, sometimes no win, sometimes small win, and then you hope for the big win, and so on. Since every bet has some chance of winning, there comes an expectation, or more truthfully, a hope that the next bet will win. Even after losing everything, when gambling has become a sickness, a gambler will try to gather money, rob, steal, beg, whatever they want to do, just for one more bet. Some people's lives has been destroyed by the power of variable ratio conditioning, which is resistant to extinction. As a result, they become addicted to gambling. So this is how, for example, the laws of learning affect our life in terms of gambling addiction. So the whole play is variable ratio. Sometimes you win, sometimes you don't win. So people who are addicted to, for example, the jackpot, they'll just click and click and click and click and click and click until they lose everything. So the odds are always for the winning bet going to the casino. But the people will still go because they hope for one big jackpot. All right, and this is the problem that you see everywhere. Even in my home country, Malaysia, you can find people queuing for the 4-digit lottery, which is announced every week, and you can find it's the poor people who sacrifice their hard-earned labor as a laborer or as manual workers, or even professionals who queue. Even some Muslims in their skull cap queuing to go and gamble because they're addicted to it. And you can find sometimes on the day in which the bet are announced, you can these people cursing and swearing. And they say all kind of terrible words. You can see just outside the betting shop, they curse and swear at their the so-called evil luck, why they don't strike and so on. So gambling is one of the evils, and this evil is conditioned by variable ratio conditioning. So you must understand the laws of learning through both classical and operant conditioning, and then apply this in a positive manner, because there is also a positive way in which you can overcome this idea of variable ratio conditioning, in which you can use it in a positive manner. So inshallah, if you know how to go about the whole ideas of the laws of learning, you understand the effect of conditioning, then you can understand to take preventive measures, so that inshallah we can counsel or help people who are gambling, to explain to them why they are addicted to gambling, and why in the long run it is going to ruin their life, and why they should avoid gambling. That's why in the Deen of Islam, Allah tells us, when they ask you about gambling, all right, Allah tells us about this gambling or putting on bets. Allah tells us that there is some benefit. Yes, there's some benefit. You may have some win, but the evil is more than the benefit. So that's why it is very clear in the Quran, and Allah knows this whole idea. So Allah has preceded the idea of this variable ratio conditioning, because Allah knows there are some people who have some benefit, but then the evil associated to gambling, where you become an addict, is even worse than the benefit that you get from the short-term wins of this gambling. And this is very clear in the Quran. So that's why gambling is haram in Islam, intoxicant is haram in Islam, and also the whole idea of intoxicants also can be explained from this kind of conditioning, which we will learn inshallah. Once we understand this whole idea of conditioning, we can then help people who are conditioned to go through the extinction process, help them to the Islamic approach. We are developing our positive Islamic cognitive behavior therapy, PICBT, so that we can do through group counseling, help them to overcome their gambling habits and lead a better, useful life with peace and happiness, inshallah. Striving, inshallah, for all of us to be the custodian, the Caliph of Allah on this earth, striving to make ourselves good, helping others to be good, making the world good, inshallah.